Hello and welcome to Comic Drake, where I talk about comic books. My name is Drake. So I want to do something a little bit different with this video. This is pretty much going to be unscripted, just my real thoughts. But before we get into things, I want to briefly give a shout out to today's sponsor. It'll only take about a minute and it does help keep the lights on. So you guys might not know this, but I absolutely love puzzle games. Sometimes I have to uninstall them on my phone just so I won't get distracted and actually get work done. At least with Marvel Puzzle Quest, it actually relates to work, so hey, justification. It's a traditional match 3 puzzle game with awesome RPG style mechanics that's available on iOS, Android, Amazon, and even Steam, absolutely free. The game has lots of Marvel characters, both new and old, with unique outfits and abilities, so you can mix and match with over 150 of them, and it is insanely cool. There's a bunch of different modes, including a story campaign and tournaments, with constantly updated content to keep up with the ever-changing world of Marvel. Heck, they just added Ant-Man and Wasp related content to go with the upcoming movie. Marvel Puzzle Quest is giving new players free tokens that might just get you some of the most powerful characters in the game if you just click the link in the description. And while you're there, go ahead and join my alliance. It's like a guild where we can all share the rewards. So go ahead and click that link to help support the channel and get hooked on this awesome game in the process. So I was legitimately curious as to what the deal is with Arcade. He's this villain that's been around for quite a while, in fact originally appearing in 1978. He's lesser known, but has still endured over the years surprisingly well. So for many of you guys that don't know who Arcade is, which honestly I wouldn't be surprised, he's just a mastermind-esque character. His whole shtick is that he has Murder World, and Murder World takes on many different incarnations throughout the years. It's a gamey theme land that's all about death, big contraptions with giant spike balls, killer robots, a whole bunch of stuff. Murder World is completely campy, but its entire existence is basically what my catchphrase of "because comics" is entirely about. This kind of really stupid, over-the-top nonsense that seems like it would fit in a dream. This kind of nonsensical bit that only makes sense in the context of this setting. It would only make sense in the context of comics. Sure, this would probably fit in really well in a super campy horror movie or something like that. It just seems very much comic books, and it's great. It's absolutely great. It's really interesting since Arcade is a master manipulator and illusionist, but he works behind the scenes. However, he's still egotistical enough to make sure that you know exactly who you're dealing with. He honestly kind of reminds me of the Riddler a little bit, which is cool because the Riddler is my favorite Batman villain. They're both big-brained bad guys who want the heroes to outthink the situations that they're in while sporting a suit and cane at the same time. They both have these large egos and they really think that they're the shit, but generally, they're not. They're pretty lame, all things considered. Much like how the Riddler has gone through several reinventions, it's the same kind of Riddler, but he's gone through all of these different costume changes, trying to make him cool and update him. Arcade has gone through some similar kind of stuff, but they've never quite clicked as well as anything that Edward Nygma has. One thing that's very fascinating about Arcade is that he never actually wins. He's always just messing up time after time. He builds these giant, oddly specific contraption death machine worlds for the heroes to fight in, but they always win. He's kind of a joke, which is interesting, at least in my opinion. Even though he's pretty one-dimensional, Arcade definitely does set himself apart from a lot of the villains in the Marvel Universe. The fact that the Riddler is the closest comparison that I have to him kind of shows that he's a little bit more analogous than anything else. This is something that was actually noticed in the Marvel DC crossover, and they actually made a card giving the two a little bit of shared card space, I guess you would call it, in the artwork. I don't know. One of the big problems that I have with comic books in general are that there are several underutilized characters that are never really played with. Like, why make a storyline featuring any of Spider-Man's smaller but iconic villains when readers just end up eating up another Green Goblin, Venom, or Carnage story? To go back to the Batman analogy, it's amazing how many villains Batman has that people absolutely adore, and things like the animated series really allowed people to see more of them, but the comics, they don't really sell all that much, so they end up just relying on, oh, it's yet another Joker story, and I don't dig that. Arcade is one of these lesser known characters that has kind of fallen through the cracks just because he's not a big name. I highly doubt that he's going to lead anything in the MCU anytime soon. That all kind of changed a bit for Arcade with the storyline Avengers Avengers Arena, which is arguably his most defining storyline, at least in recent memory. This book was heavily inspired by the Hunger Games. In fact, Arcade doesn't make a direct call out to it, but he says that while he was in prison, he was inspired by a book that he read in there. Pretty obviously Hunger Games. This battle royale style bit where he gets all of these teenage young adult heroes, throw them in this arena of ever-changing problems where there can only be one. It's a little bit contrived, but at least Marvel was getting in on the battle royale hype even before the gaming industry with things like PUBG and Fortnite. And I guess this predates Thanos being in Fortnite, so I guess, yeah, Marvel's real first foray into the world of Battle Royale. I actually really ended up enjoying Avengers Arena, despite thinking I probably wouldn't, since it just seemed like, oh, Marvel's doing Hunger Games. I only really checked out the book because I'm a big fan of the Avengers Academy series, which this was kind of a direct sequel to. Not necessarily, but the characters didn't really do anything else once the Avengers Academy book ended, and I just had to have more. It also doesn't hurt that I am a huge sucker for the Runaways, and they actually had a couple of Runaways characters, Nico and Chase, in the book. So it definitely helped sell me on reading it. It ended up being a lot of fun. It really focused on character relationships, but even though this was one of Arcade's biggest roles, like he always does, he kind of hangs out in the back. He'll chime in every now and then, and sure, we do get a little bit of him and more of his motivation, generally it being a bit more cowardly. It was still more three-dimensional than we normally see in his quick pop-up appearances, at least for one-shot issues where it's like, oh, here's another murder world, how are the heroes gonna get out of this one? Or where he's just in the background at a party or something just to have Marvel kind of acknowledge that he exists. At the end of the day, Arcade kind of won. It's a little bit iffy. I'd honestly just recommend reading the book, but yeah, he won, but he didn't at the same time. And this book, Avengers Arena, did get a follow-up directly with Avengers Undercover, and it wasn't as good. I really do think that the Battle Royale style thing kept the book moving along. And while Avengers Undercover, it was a very different genre of book entirely, even though it was the same writer and followed the same characters, it didn't really feel as streamlined and action-packed, I guess is the best way to say that. Anyway, Arcade in this book got some rep in the supervillain community after putting the footage from Avengers Arena on YouTube. And although this made him a bigger deal in universe, he was always seen as a joke beforehand. And even though this footage went viral, and he ended up getting cred, his newfound success did go to his head. And it was honestly kind of interesting to see, because this is a character that has failed time and time again. And man, oh man, this cockiness is second to none. But it's interesting though, because even in universe, he's still regarded as a bit of a joke, since there's no denying that he was literally killing children. It's kind of hard to sell that. Sure, it might make you a big psychotic badass, but come on. While the two series ended in 2014, Arcade really wasn't seen again until around 2016 and 2017. This is fascinating to me because he was shoehorned into, like, everything. Around this time, Black Cat got a similar treatment, and for a while, if Black Cat or Arcade didn't appear as an antagonist in a book, it was honestly a surprise. He just was everywhere, all the time. This wasn't necessarily a bad thing, since some of the appearances were actually pretty alright. I especially liked Arcade's appearance in the Gwenpool series, where he was running a live-action D&D style murder world. Although, my love for that might be a little less that it's Arcade, and more of the fact that I am a major tabletop fanatic, and I actually used to LARP back in my somehow more cringy days. Even then, this was more run-of-the-mill, bad guy of the week style stuff. He appeared, new murder world, deal with that stuff, gets defeated, move on. It really seemed like Marvel was trying to push this character to be a bigger deal. And it's interesting that it took so long after Avengers Arena and Avengers Undercover for this to really happen. You would think that right after this big, fun two-part series, that would be the time to try and bring Arcade into the spotlight. So did this end up working though, this 2016-2017 push? Well, we're not really seeing Arcade in any way, shape, or form nowadays, so I guess not really. Maybe Marvel is just giving him a breather, which would be very much warranted. I know that I wasn't the only one getting annoyed that, oh boy, it's Black Cat and Arcade. Like, we haven't seen this character shoved in our faces time and time again recently. I like think that Marvel is deciding to play with more of the toys in their toy box, probably seeing which characters resonate more with a modern demographic, seeing how they can update some of these older characters to better be used in future TV shows and movies and stuff like that, because that's honestly, comics just seem like the playground for prototyping the MCU. But yeah, I don't know. I like Arcade, I really dig his whole thing. Like I said, I'm a big fan of the Riddler, so this kind of character appeals to me more, but he's a bit more psychotic, just definitely delighting in pain. He's much more of a sadist than, honestly, a lot of characters in the Marvel universe. I think that there is a place for him, but I think Marvel is still kind of struggling to see what he's going to be like nowadays. So I really do like that they've been trying to give him more of a bigger role, but it just didn't seem like this was the way to go about it. I think that in order to really let Arcade be a bigger deal, he needs to be given another storyline in a mainstream book, like one of the big sellers, but not one that's just a quick 1 or 2 issues, an actual ongoing storyline. It kind of defeats the entire purpose since he just creates these murder worlds and it's, you know, real quick to defeat them. But I don't know, maybe just do a little something different from the obstacle course. We've seen many different types of murder worlds. The fact that we can get a D&D murder world shows that, well, he doesn't have to be all about giant pinball machines. I don't know. The deal with Arcade is just, he's such a strange man, and he's such a strange case of a character enduring over the years and being reinvented by this company for, I honestly don't know the reason, but it's cool that he's not being forgotten. Anyway, like I said, this is a little bit of a different video, completely unscripted, save for like a few notes here and there, but let me know what you think. Maybe I'll do more stuff like this more often. But if you like this video, then why not consider subscribing or even watching another one? In fact, if you want to see another one of my video experiments where I go a bit off model, then check out the April 1st video that I did on the live action Japanese Spider-Man Sentai show. I had a lot of fun putting that together, and man, that was a blast. Anyway, I hope you learned at least a little something new, and maybe I'll see you next time.